Hello and good evening. Thank you all for joining this evening's How to Go Green webinar. I'm Assemblymember Chris Ward, your representative for the 78th Assembly District, including many of our communities here in central San Diego. Along with many other legislative priorities, including housing and social equity, a core focus of my legislation in Sacramento at our capital has been around green energy. And that's why I couldn't be happier to provide this webinar for those interested in installing solar and/or exploring electric vehicle ownership. Now, we have informative experts joining us from a variety of organizations who will be able to present more details on these subjects, from installing solar and finding a contractor to comparisons between electric vehicles and what rebates might be available to you. Importantly, tonight's webinar will help constituents understand some of the benefits and incentives available to make going green financially feasible for you too. Now, to give you an idea what some of my colleagues and I have been up to in Sacramento, we sent several bills to the Governor Newsom's desk, and hopefully he'll be signing them by the end of the month. Some notable bills that I voted to support include AB 2427, which would require the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, or GoBiz, to develop a model permitting checklist to help local governments permit curbside electric vehicle charging stations. And Senate Bill 1003, which will provide a more effective oversight of utility wildfire mitigation expenses by incorporating a cost-effective component to the oversight process. It's incredibly important to me that we move our future closer to energy independence, because it's not lost on me that rising energy prices are harming consumers. The more we participate in creating our own energy and exploring alternative energy production and transitioning off oil and gas, the cleaner our future will be for younger generations, something we are especially feeling today in this record heat wave. Last year, for example, I passed AB 2316, which would have created options for renters and homeowners who cannot install solar for their property to buy into a shared community solar farm. Unfortunately, due to the actions taken by the California Public Utilities Commission, those efforts have been stalled, but I'm undeterred by their actions and remain committed to creating a diversity of energy options for consumers. And I could not be more proud of our city and our county's work to push for a greener future for San Diego. From investments in electric vehicle, public transportation fleets, to additional rebates for electric vehicles and solar panel installations, we are a leader in this state and effectively the nation in green energy production. Now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome some of our experts presenting this evening. Bernadette Del Cairo, the California Solar Storage Association, Jason Zimbler with CalStart, Anthony Bento with the California New Car Dealers Association, and Natasha Contreras with San Diego Gas and Electric. We'll start this evening with a presentation on how to go solar, presented by Ms. Del Cairo, followed by a presentation on how to drive electric. And please stay tuned for a special announcement on how you can test drive electric vehicles this weekend for free without the pressure to purchase. Bernadette, I'd like you to take it away.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Assemblymember Ward. It is really great to be here with you and your constituents down in District 78. I'm actually zooming in from up in Sacramento, where I run California's statewide Solar and Storage Trade Association. And I've just got to share that we are so lucky that District 78 has sent you to represent it up here in Sacramento. It is hard to find a more committed and dedicated and hardworking legislator fighting for consumers and an alternative, better future. So thank you so much for having us. Let me, I've got a lot to cover in a couple minutes on making one of the biggest, I think, and most important decisions of going solar and adding a battery. So without further ado, let me see if I can share my slides. How does that look? All right, I'm going to assume it looks good. Okay, so I'm going to whip through these slides. We will make them available to you if you want to get copies of them, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. I'll provide my email address. The California Solar and Storage Association was formed in 1977. We're California's oldest and largest clean energy business groups for over 700 businesses, many of which are based there in sunny San Diego. Since 2006, just to give it a big picture here, more than 2 million families, schools, churches, farms, you name it, have gone solar, building about 8 nuclear power plants worth of clean energy. It really adds up when we all collectively work together for a better clean energy future, sort of the whole purpose of this webinar as I see it. We've also built the largest battery in the world, and we're just getting started with solar paired batteries. As a result, rooftop solar has been very good for California. So if you have already gone solar, thank you for helping build a more affordable, resilient, clean electric grid. And if you're thinking about it, we need you to jump on in, because we have a long way to go to reach our clean energy goals and really, truly get the prices of electricity down to normal. Rooftop solar has done an amazing job of reducing peak electricity in California. This is kind of a wonky slide, but it just shows you that despite population growth, economic growth, and increased heat, plus increased usage in electricity, California has kept its hot summertime, daytime peak electricity loads, which are still when we use the most electricity. We've kept them flat for over 20 years. This has enabled our utilities to reduce their spending on building a supersized grid, and it really provides benefits for everybody. And this is even more important as we electrify, right? As more of us put electric cars in our driveways or down at the parking garage of our apartment buildings, it's really important that we cover at least some of that increased consumption with local generation that doesn't require expensive poles and wires to deliver the electrons. So I'm going to do a quick overview of when I say solar energy, what am I even talking about? Many of you probably already know this, but there's photovoltaics, solar photovoltaics. They take the photons from the sun, the light, and they convert it directly into electricity. The most common is put up on roofs like this one. There's also organic photovoltaics, which are really cool, leading edge. This is where you can coat the windows of tall office buildings, and those windows can be see-through, but actually can generate electricity. The Netflix headquarters in LA is all full of solar like this. It's very cool. And then there's, of course, all different types that you can scale this technology down to a calculator or all the way up to a utility scale power plant out in the desert. I love it in this format, on the roof of a home, on the roof of a church, over the parking lot of an IKEA or a Walmart or what have you, because it makes such good use of our built environment. It's very efficient and has a light footprint on our planet. There is also a form of solar energy called solar hot water. A lot of people don't know about this. Looks just like PV up on the roof, and it just simply heats water for use inside your home or in use inside an apartment building or an industrial building. Crazy, super efficient. I have one of these on my own home, and they really cut down on your use of natural gas, or they can augment a heat pump water heater. And then you can also use hot water to actually cool buildings. There's a lot of buildings in Arizona that use solar hot water as air conditioning through using a chiller. Just a little side fact. And then, of course, there's batteries. So we can pair these solar electric systems, photovoltaic systems, with batteries. The most common chemistry is lithium ion today. There's lots of different types of chemistries to store electricity for later use. So you can put that solar roof of yours to work in the day, store that electricity at night, and use it when the sun goes down, and really make that sun kind of shine all throughout when you need it. So just a reminder, you may live in a neighborhood with a lot of solar panels, and you might think that's the only people going solar are your immediate neighbors, but that is not true. Of those 2 million solar consumers, all different shapes and sizes, schools and government, farms and industry, big commercial properties, multifamily housing properties. You can add it to an existing home, or you can build it right into a home as it's being built. There's lots and lots of different ways to incorporate solar into our lives. And this is actually a really important statistic I just want to share. 60% of all of California's 2 million solar users are low and middle income. 53% are people of color, and these statistics go up higher when you look at the more recent years as prices have gone down and financing options have gone up. And I'll talk about some of those financing options in a minute. And this is also one of my favorite facts. Solar is popular everywhere in California. It's not just the coastal regions like some people think. As you guys can see here, San Diego County proudly comes in the top 15 in terms of solar per capita. And this is just rooftop solar. by population. But as you can see, it's our Central Valley, traditionally more conservative, very oil-friendly counties that are some of the biggest investors in solar because it makes such sense for us in California, regardless of where we live, what our politics are, or where we come from. And then this is the other thing I'd love to talk about with rooftop solar. If you're thinking about going, you will have a benefit that's beyond just greening up your home, because one of the largest motivators for going solar is seeing that your neighbor did it. Your neighbors will go, your whole community will go. And as we know from this webinar, we are even seeing a record number of elected officials going solar, which obviously helps us pass good policies to make it possible for even more people to be part of this change. And then solar is like a gateway. Once people go solar, they typically then get interested in driving electric and then doing other things to get off of fossil fuels. So down to brass tacks here, I provide just a very quick economic, what's the price tag of going solar plus storage today? This is a very average cost. So, if you have a larger system, this is a 6 kilowatt system, which is the average California residential solar system, plus a single battery, which can cover your evening electricity usage for a couple of hours. If you want a bigger battery, it'll add more. If you want a bigger solar system because your home is bigger, you have 2 electric cars in the driveway, the cost will go up. But this is an average system cost, just to give you a benchmark. So it's about $30,000 for the solar plus the storage installed. There's a 30% federal tax credit that most consumers have the ability to take advantage of. And that makes the final sort of out-of-pocket cost after the tax credit is taken advantage of on your taxes of $20,000. I also want to mention solar hot water systems are cheaper. They cost around $10,000 and also eligible for that federal tax credit. There are also rebate programs for batteries. There's not a lot of them, but there's some. Your community power program down there has just started offering a rebate program for batteries, and we're happy to share information with you about that if you want to email me. And then San Diego Gas and Electric also offers an incentive soon for low-income consumers. There's 5 ways to kind of cover these costs. You either have the cash saved up and you just pay outright with cash. You can qualify for a home equity loan. You can qualify for a special solar loan. These are available through companies that specialize in providing energy efficiency and solar loans. There's also a new program through the state of California called Go Green that provides solar loans through local credit unions at percentages below the going rate on interest. So if you're interested in going solar right now, check out Go Green. You can lease the solar system where the company owns it and you make payments over time to help cover that high upfront cost. And then the last but not least, about 30% of residential solar systems in California are purchased through a power purchase agreement. This is the so-called no cash down option. This is where a company will come in, build the solar system on your roof. You have no out-of-pocket obligation, and you just buy electricity from them every single month at a rate that's lower than your retail rate. So you can save money without having to spend any money on the solar system. So those numbers to the left there, the $20,000 are kind of irrelevant because you're not putting any of your own money into that system. And you just get, you kind of give up your roof to the solar and you buy it from the company every month. There are many benefits to going solar. I just focused on 3 main ones. One, it lowers your monthly utility bill, protects you from, ever rising utility rates. If you add a battery and you configure it correctly, you can have electricity when the lights go out, so during outage events. And then it adds value to the resale of your home should you want to, sell your home in the 20 years that the system is up and running and warranted. And I wanted to make a special point about renters. The Assemblymember Award has done great work with creating sort of a third way to go solar. The first way is our utilities just build utility scale power plants out in the desert that are large systems that get piped into our cities through large transmission lines, and they're just part of the energy mix. When you flip on the switch, there's a piece of that that is sun powered. That's sort of one way. The second way is through rooftop, where you put it either on the parking lot or on the roof, but you're on the site of where you use it. You're called what we call behind the meter. So that's owned by the property owner, the homeowner, whoever, and the electrons flow directly to the people that live on that property. So with renters, it's absolutely possible to go solar through what's called virtual net metering. So it's basically you put solar on the roof of an apartment or over the parking lot, like you can see in this photo, and all of the electrons are then shared to all of the accounts on that property. So let's say if there's 20 apartment units on this multifamily housing, this is a low-income project in San Diego. Everybody, all 20 apartment units, get to share in the cost and bill reductions from that solar system. So rooftop solar absolutely works for renters, just as well as it works for single family homes or churches or anybody. The third way is what Assemblymember Ward talked about at the beginning, is community solar. And this is where either the project is built at a far away, out in the desert, or sometimes it can be built on a warehouse or someplace that doesn't have a lot of on-site electricity needs. And then subscribers can pitch in and buy electrons that kind of account as credits on their utility bill. That's the idea. Other states like Massachusetts and Minnesota and Colorado have done a bang-up job with the idea of community solar, creating this third path for developing clean energy. And as the Assembly member mentioned, unfortunately, our Public Utilities Commission has not done such a good job, as they have not done with the treatment of rooftop solar as well. So we got a long way to go to get California back on track to make its actions match its rhetoric about clean energy goals, because we're nowhere close to our goals. But just to give you a sense, you definitely can go solar if you're living in an apartment and your apartment owner, either a nonprofit or the developer, puts it on the parking lot or on the roof. And then last but not least, with two more slides real quickly, and I'll turn it back to you, Assembly member. I've got 4 tips for going solar. There's lots of other things that you can add in, but these are the 4 main ones I want everybody to make sure to remember. One is never feel rushed. The sun's gonna shine tomorrow and you're gonna have a utility bill tomorrow, so don't let anybody ever rush you. Get 3 bids, minimally, get 3 bids so that you can really cost compare and figure out what contractor you really feel comfortable with. Second is choose a contractor who's a member of a trade group like CALSA. I know that might sound self-serving, but the reason is the trade group provides all the up-to-date information, and it shows when a contractor is a member of a trade group, it shows they really care about being a quality, shop. They're not fly-by-night. They're really in it for the long haul, and they're part of a larger industry that has ethics and standards that they abide by. Check their license. You can check it against the Contractor State License Board website. Super easy to do. The third is get a free in-person consultation. You might talk to a contractor over the phone for some initial conversation, but definitely before you get a bid, make sure they come out and actually look at your house and talk with you and get a feel for things. And then with your contractor, consider your future electricity usage. And this is particularly important with this webinar, because as I mentioned, a lot of people that are going solar are going to want to electrify their home or add an electric car. You can calculate future electricity usage and factor that into the size of your solar system. But that said, so definitely talk to your contractor about what your future plans are. Don't let these unknowns get in the way of going solar and delay you too long, because solar is modular, so you can always add on to a system at a later date. And then I think this question was shared with the Assembly member's office, so I wanted to address it. You can add a battery to an existing solar system. If you went solar, either a long time ago or really recent, and you're part of especially the net metering, NEM 1.0 or NEM 2.0, if you know what those terms mean. Basically, if you went solar prior to April 2023, if you went solar prior to April 2023, and you don't yet have a battery, it is absolutely super simple to add a battery to your existing solar system. You will not lose your net metering status. Whatever you signed up for, you get to keep for the 20-year grandfathering, and you can add a battery to that system. You can also add more solar panels with that battery and add what's called a non-exporting system. The utilities limit how much you can add to your solar system in some cases. So if you add a battery, it gives you a little more flexibility to also add solar panels if your load has increased without losing your net metering status. So with that, again, I'm more than happy to share my email, and I'm happy to answer any questions over email after the webinar's over.
Thank you, Bernadette. A lot of information packed in there, but hopefully a really healthy overview to understand, both the benefits and the incentives and the economics of how to go solar. Appreciate you addressing some of the solar the battery storage question that had come in earlier to our office, but might have another question or two for you. So hang out for our next presentation, and we'll maybe get to some Q&A after that. At this time, I'd like to also welcome Jason Zimbler with CalStart, who's going to kick off the second portion of our webinar, How to Drive Electric. Jason, it's all yours.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Is the audio and video good?
You're sounding good.
Great. And are the slides working?
Here we are.
Very good. Pleasure to be with you, everybody, and happy to talk about my favorite topic, which is electric vehicles. I am Jason Zimbler. I'm the Light Duty Vehicle Director at CalStart. We're a clean transportation nonprofit that leads a number of large programs at the state and federal level to advance vehicle electrification and advocates for policies that drive the market towards decarbonization. I'm going to talk to you today about how you can start the process of going electric and understanding what's involved. So let's talk about the case for EVs. I have a lot of information here. I'll run through it quickly, and I look forward to taking any questions. I want to talk about how EVs are sort of the next thing for the market and where we're going in transportation, the environmental benefits, the benefits to the consumer, and then ultimately what at a macro level, and then what you need to know as you're starting to think about driving electric. What is this technology about? What are the options? How do you own an electric vehicle? Will you run out of charge? Where do you find charging? Things like that. There are many resources out there to help demystify this, but hopefully this is a starting point. And one of the big questions people are concerned with is not the daily driving and whether the EV fits into their lifestyle on a day-to-day basis, but how they visit grandma or grandpa or take their vacations and road trips, and whether the EVs can meet the need for that. So we'll touch on a lot of that. So the case for electric vehicles. This is where we are in history. We've graduated from the horse to the basic vehicle to a more advanced combustion vehicle, and now we're on a long journey towards a decarbonized, high efficiency vehicle. The technology is getting us there. It's a very exciting transition. These vehicles are much more advanced than their combustion counterparts. They're simpler, and we're getting all that advanced technology with a simpler set of parts, a simpler vehicle, which is incredibly efficient. So that's sort of the next page and the next turning the chapter in transportation. It's also a regulatory reality. In 2035, California and some of its peer states now have a policy in place that all light duty sales within those states are to be zero emission, and that gets us jumping forward to 2050, in which over the course of 15 years, which is the typical life of a vehicle, if all new sales are zero emission in 2035, by 2050, most vehicles on the road will be zero emission, and that gets us to close to our science-based targets of an economy-wide decarbonized future to avoid the worst effects of climate change. Climate change is a reality, and the emissions from the multiple sectors all have to be addressed in many ways. We heard from the power generation in the emissions that are being reduced from power generation in the last presentation, and now as we move towards electric vehicles, that allows us to reduce the emissions from the transportation sector. Light duty vehicles are the largest subset of transportation emissions. EVs are cleaner everywhere you drive. This map from the Union of Concerned Scientists tells us that in every part of the country, the electricity generation that feeds the vehicles themselves may have a variable amount of carbon embedded in that electricity because the generation mix may be more fossil fuel based or maybe more hydro based. But even at the sort of the dirtiest grid, all the way to the cleanest grid, EVs are more efficient and more fuel efficient, use less, produce a higher MPG mile per gallon than a gasoline vehicle in every part of the country. And that's only going to get better as the generation mix moves from a current mix to a future of mostly or even all renewables. The vehicles we drive will be 100% zero emission. People talk about the life cycle emissions of gasoline cars versus EVs, and EVs can start out from production as at a higher embedded carbon, a higher emission, but very quickly over the course of their life. But even I think the sort of the lines converge and change in maybe the second or third year of an EV's life on the road. The EV starts to be a much cleaner vehicle, and the life cycle emissions only improve from there. So EVs are a cleaner technology, and that, as I say, that only improves over time, gets even better as the generation mix improves. EVs are a technology that, despite some recent headlines that sales are slowing and that there's maybe some tepid market uptake, EVs are growing, and they're remarkably growing. I've been in this market, in this world for 10 years, and EVs were 1 and 2% of sales nationally, and now we're close to 10, and the future is very bright. In California, I know past 25% of sales. So market share is really impressive and growing, and what you're seeing in this graph reflects the blue bar of the all-electric technology I'm going to get to in a little bit, and the purple bars are the plug-in hybrid technology. This does not include regular hybrid vehicles. We'll talk about that in a second. So what's the sort of bringing that all together? What's the case for EVs? Well, the ownership costs are lower for the consumer, and that comes from lower fuel costs, lower maintenance costs. There's some really good research to back this up, and I'll show you a graph in a moment. The reduced greenhouse gas is a sort of points that I've been making all along, and it's not just from greenhouse gas, global warming gases, but also criteria pollutants, nitrogen oxide, sulfur oxide. So the human health benefits are notably better from not combusting gasoline and producing the byproducts of that combustion. So EVs are better for the climate, better for human health. Tax credits and rebates exist for EVs, not just for the vehicles, but for building charging infrastructure. And that's very exciting. And then once you get in an EV, you start to realize why this technology is the future. It's an extremely fun drive. It's a very smooth and quiet drive. The acceleration is amazing. The technology in these vehicles is high end. You can control them from your smartphones. It's very exciting, the EV technology. This is the graph I was alluding to, which is telling you that stacking up all the costs that relate to the total cost of ownership, the upfront costs, the fuel costs, the maintenance costs, insurance, you're for a mid-size SUV or a small to mid-size SUV, comparing two average technologies, Tesla Model Y to Toyota Highlander, the total cost of ownership is lower for the EV. What's the next step? Well, it's to understand what your range of options are. Hybrid electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles. That's a lot of acronyms. Hybrids have no electric motor that they do all of their transportation on. They have a gas motor and a very small battery and a very small electric motor that allows the gas mileage to be improved. Think of a Prius. So you're getting better gas mileage than a gas car. It's definitely a step in the right direction, but there is no electric motoring. There's no plugging in that vehicle. It's just a gas car that's augmented to do better, efficient motoring. A plug-in hybrid is the beginning of where electric motoring takes place, and that's where with a small-ish battery and an electric motor, and for the first, as long as that battery is charged, the car will do all of its driving without combusting gasoline, and produces its momentum, its propulsion with the electric motor only. When that battery runs out, the gas engine takes over and gives you the full range available to that car. So 400, the standard expectation of range for a US vehicle today. 20 to 40 miles is sort of intentional because that's what an average American drives on a day. So conceivably, you could do if you charged your plug-in hybrid every night, you could do all your daily driving, not your road trips, but your daily driving on electric. And then battery electrics have no gas engine whatsoever. They get all of their propulsion from the electric motor and the battery. The battery ranges are improving with improved batteries and cheaper batteries. And right now their ranges are lower on average than a typical gas car, but that is improving each year. And within a few years, I think we'll have 400, 500, 600-mile battery electric vehicles. When you're starting to consider going towards an electric vehicle, you'd want to be thinking about your home installation costs, whether you have access to a plug at home, where the charging infrastructure around you is. The factors that affect your range could be elevation if you live in a hilly area, or big swings in temperature. EVs have somewhat reduced range, 20 to 30% reduced range in the highest temperatures and in the lowest temperatures. So those are the kinds of things you want to think about that would factor into which vehicle you purchase. And battery life and just ownership concerns. Insurance can be on par cost-wise, can be a little more expensive. Care and maintenance is different. Your local mechanics may not know as much about EVs, but there are other mechanics who do. So those are the kinds of considerations. I know others are going to touch on this probably more, but charging is not as simple as just going to a gas station. Obviously, there are different levels of charging. That your basic wall outlet is level 1. You can plug your car into that. It will take many, many hours to charge. Level 2 is like a dryer outlet, a 220-volt, 30 or 40 or 50 amp outlet, and then that will charge your car in a few hours overnight for sure. And then a fast charge is like a gas station experience, and that can charge a car in 15, 30, 45 minutes. Excellent for a rest stop and a meal. As you're thinking about road trips, this is where there starts to be a little more, consideration about how you make the trip work with an EV, at least initially. Because I've been an EV owner for 6 years, and I do road trips and don't really even think about it so much. But as you begin to switch over, you want to think about where the charging stops will be along your route, and whether or not your destination has charging, so you can get there with a lower battery and then charge up overnight, or let the car idle and charge. You'd want to know, especially if you have a family, how long it's going to take you to charge. It could be 30 minutes or more, and they have to factor that into your stops and think about how that impacts your arrival times. There are fantastic charging tools that give you visibility into where charging stations are, and whether they're online and whether they're available and occupied by vehicles. And that knowing where those are can allow you to pick your alternate routes if something is crowded and there's a charging station nearby that might be better, that might necessitate a tweak to your route. And of course, just as a kind of good practice, have all the necessary accessories and adapters for plugging into a standard outlet, most of which come with the car. But as we're in a transition now to a kind of nationwide universal fast charge port, there are still some vehicles that are in what will probably be called a legacy port, and having an adapter from a CCS port to a Tesla port is going to be necessary as we get further. And with that, I can make these slides available. I've put a couple of links here, which are hopefully will be helpful for folks who want to learn more and go deeper. These are some excellent resources, and I'm happy to take questions, and I will turn it back over to you, Assembly Member.
Great, thank you, Jason. I think with the California New Car Dealers Association, we also have with us Anthony Bento. I'll ask Anthony to jump on and maybe add a little bit more color to the topic of EVs.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak today. And I'm going to focus my time and my presentation on the incentives that we have available to residents of San Diego County and the greater San Diego area So with that, I think we just move to the next slide. I'm going to be talking about the elephant in the room here are the new federal incentives that were created. I guess they're not quite as new anymore, but they were created a couple of years ago by the Federal Inflation Reduction Act. And just earlier this year, they were modified to be applied point of sale for certain vehicles. But there's as many programs tend to be, unfortunately, they can be a little bit complicated. So I'm here to just demystify them a little bit to you. And if you take one thing away from this presentation, it should be to strongly consider leasing an electric vehicle for reasons that I'm going to highlight. But it really boils down to the way that the Federal Inflation Reduction Act was structured and how many more vehicles qualify for incentives if they are leased than if they are bought outright. So next slide, please. So the sales incentive for new vehicles at the federal level is pretty broad. It has fairly high income thresholds. There are income limits. So 150,000 for adjusted gross income for a single individual, 300,000 for married individuals. This is for new vehicles only, but there are restrictions on the application of the incentive. So there are MSRP caps that are noted on this slide that are fairly generous, but they will exclude some of the pricier vehicles. And also there critically are limits on where the vehicle is assembled. So there is a requirement under the Inflation Reduction Act, because they were really trying to do two things, the federal government, with the Inflation Reduction Act. They were trying to promote the transition to green technology and electric vehicles, but they were also trying to promote the production of batteries and vehicles in the United States and in North America generally. So they put into the bill a requirement that the final assembly of vehicles be in North America. And they also imposed requirements that are increasingly stringent that require the sourcing of the minerals and the battery components to be from the United States. Because as many of you may remember, during the COVID pandemic, there were severe supply shocks throughout a variety of industries. And the federal government became much more concerned about the sourcing of critical infrastructure, critical materials. So the Inflation Reduction Act, the sales incentive here, was used as a tool to encourage the production of vehicles and batteries and battery components in North America or from friendly nations. So the bottom line, though, with all that, there's a lot of good there in that we're sourcing that technology domestically or through friendly countries. But it does mean that many vehicles do not qualify, many electric vehicles or zero-emission vehicles do not qualify for the sales incentive because their batteries might not have the right components in them, or they might not see final assembly in North America. So if we can go to the next slide. Here's a list of vehicles. I went on to the IRS's website. Anyone can do this, and you can see what vehicles may qualify. These are 2024 model year vehicles that qualify for the sales credit. And as you can see, there are a number of vehicles that qualify for the sales incentive. However, there are notable omissions here. What you will not see on this list are the Hyundai and Kia vehicles, for example. Some of the most candidly, this is me opining, not the California New Car Dealers Association, but some of the most exciting electric vehicles now are coming from Hyundai and Kia. And they're definitely ones that you should consider, as well as electric vehicles from BMW, for example, make some fantastic electric vehicles as well. Many other manufacturers that are not listed here, such as Audi, Toyota, and Subaru, et cetera, their vehicles do not qualify on this list because they are not the final assembly of the vehicles are not they're not in the United States. But there are a lot of options. If you are intent on purchasing your vehicle and not leasing it, there are a lot of options, but you need to remember that the vehicle needs to qualify. So the vehicle will need to qualify for the incentive, but also you individually will need to qualify. So if your income is too high, then you may not qualify for the sales incentive. So make sure that you adequately investigate it ahead of time, because your analysis as to whether the vehicle you want qualifies and whether your income qualifies is really going to mean the difference between leaving $7,500 on the table in many cases. Next slide, please. So the sales process, as I mentioned, changed at the beginning of this year. And dealers, they need to register with the IRS to apply the credit. The credit is applied point of sale. So it's applied as a down payment. So it's basically a free $7,500 down payment if it's done correctly and properly, but it acts essentially as like a free $7,500 down payment or on the sales contract. But you have to attest that you satisfy the income thresholds. And if you do exceed the income thresholds, the IRS actually later the following year, when you file your income taxes, can claw back that money. So if you said that your income was 100 or below $150,000, but it turns out that it was $175,000, the IRS might say when you file your taxes that you're going to need to repay the $7,500 that it advanced to the dealer when you file your taxes. So just make sure that you're just with all eyes wide open, understanding what you're doing when you're attesting to those income thresholds when you're purchasing the vehicle. Also, another thing to consider is the incentives. The federal incentives can be combined with state and local and utility incentives as well. So you may have a vehicle that qualifies for $7,500 in sales incentives, but you may qualify, and I'm going to talk about one important state program or regional program later in this presentation. But what you want to keep in mind is that the federal incentives can be combined with the state incentives to give you even more money to make your monthly payments in the vehicle even more affordable. Next slide. Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning, leases are a great thing to consider for when you're shopping around for a new vehicle. That's because of a variety of reasons. Ordinarily, I would never lease a vehicle. That's not something I would interested in doing. My dad would admonish me, like, never lease a vehicle. You want to buy it, et cetera, et cetera. But because of some unique factors associated with the Inflation Reduction Act and EVs specifically, or zero emission vehicles specifically, leasing is something you absolutely should consider at least. It's for a few reasons. First, the income limits don't apply because technically, and this is kind of a loophole in the Inflation Reduction Act, but it's one that's fully sanctioned by the IRS and the federal government's fully behind it. But because the leasing company is the first owner of the vehicle, and it is actually categorized under the law differently. They qualify for a different type of credit. It's a commercial vehicle credit instead of a individual credit, and the income limits don't apply. That means if you're a lessee, if you're leasing a vehicle, because the leasing company qualifies for the $7,500, assuming they pass it on to you, which many leasing companies are doing now, your income is irrelevant because it's the leasing company that is claiming the credit. So the bottom line is whether you make $50,000 or $500,000 in a year, you can qualify, assuming the leasing company is willing to pass their savings along to you when you lease the vehicle. Also, many more vehicles qualify for the lease incentive because the North American assembly requirement, as I mentioned earlier, doesn't apply to commercial vehicles. So that means that Hyundai, Kia, BMW, Audi, Toyota, the list goes on. All of these foreign automakers, typically Japanese, Korean, and European automakers, their EVs, many of which are very fantastic vehicles to consider, they qualify. for the leasing incentive, and those leasing companies are passing that savings on to you. So it has the same effect. It has the same savings. It's just you only can qualify for it is if you lease the vehicle because of the way the Inflation Reduction Act was structured. And as a result of that, if you're considering, say, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, it's great EV. You can, I think it would be candidly pretty silly to purchase it instead of lease it, because you're leaving $7,500 on the table if you purchase it instead of lease it. And you can get some fantastic low monthly payments for your lease, and you can actually just buy out the lease in many cases after a few months. Many lease agreements allow the customer to just buy out the lease, and you can pocket the savings that you get at the onset, the $7,500, when you buy out the lease. Now, I know that it sounds kind of complicated, and it can be, but there's a lot of resources out there. If you just kind of go down a Google search, if you're like me, you might use Reddit or other resources and check things out. But you can certainly contact your local dealer as well. Talk to an EV specialist. If you're talking to a Hyundai or Kia dealer in particular, they're dealing with and BMW. A high percentage of their vehicles now are EVs. So they have specialists at their stores that can really walk you through a lot of this stuff. So please use them as a resource as well. You can get monthly payments. I've seen folks that get monthly payments below $300 a month for 24-month leases. That's incredibly good deal for some of the more affordable EVs, because you're basically getting a free $7,500 down payment in your lease. Next slide, please. There's also, I wanted to mention at the federal level, there's a used vehicle credit. The income thresholds are lower. They're still fairly generous, but they're half what they are originally. But there are some pretty strict restrictions on which vehicles qualify for the used vehicle incentive. It needs to be a vehicle that it's the first time it was resold. It's $25,000. It needs to be $25,000 or less. It's certainly possible that some vehicles do qualify, but you really want to be careful with this one, because there's pretty strict restrictions on the federal used vehicle incentive. If you do qualify for it, great, but if you don't, you're definitely in good company, because for example, if you're buying a used vehicle and a used EV and it's $20,000, you might think, oh wow, I might qualify for this incentive, but then you find out, oh, the vehicle, this is actually the second time it was sold used, so it's no longer qualified or no longer qualifies for the incentive. So I wanted to flag it, but it's one that unfortunately isn't quite as effective as it could be if there were some less strict rules that applied to that incentive. And next slide, please. Also wanted to flag at the state has done some fantastic work going back well over a decade. Assemblymember Ward and his colleagues doing fantastic work to promote EV incentives in California, zero emission vehicle incentives to encourage Californians and increasingly low income Californians to purchase EVs, because candidly there are some equity issues that are associated with EVs, and these programs, many of which are operated at the state and regional level, are trying to account for that and to make these vehicles and charging more accessible, more affordable for the most vulnerable Californians. So one of these programs that I wanted to highlight is called Clean Cars for All. It's operated at a regional level. The San Diego Air Pollution Control District, there's a link there to its program. There are fairly strict income thresholds that you need to be a resident of a correct zip code. or eligible zip code to qualify. You also need to trade in a vehicle, a qualifying vehicle to qualify, but the incentives can be quite large. $12,000 is the maximum, but you can also get includes a home charger. But if you qualify for this, it can be stacked with the federal incentives and potentially other incentives to get very low monthly payments, very affordable. You also need to purchase it from a partner dealership. There are dealers that work with the Clean Cars for All programs. They're listed on the website, so you'd want to work with one of those dealerships if you are interested in this program. So that's the link to the San Diego one. Also, I'm going to put in the chat a link to one additional program called Driving Clean Assistance Program. It's not quite ready. It's but in the I've been told that in the next few days or weeks, the program will launch. It will be another statewide incentive program for lower income Californians. So there's a lot of good resources out there. It pays to spend some time educating yourself because you don't want to leave money on the table, and the money that's available, this is real dollars. So thank you so much, Assembly Member, for the opportunity to talk about this, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the end of this presentation.
Well, thank you, Anthony. A lot of information there to process, but I'm glad to know there's so many options out there to meet any individual's maybe particular situation, as the consumer choice can vary pretty broadly across the spectrum. We have one final presentation, and that's with Natasha Contreras with San Diego Gas and Electric. I think you're going to talk a little bit more about some of our local and regional benefits and programs. I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Assembly Member, and good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Natasha Contreras, and I'm the Customer Engagement Manager with San Diego Gas and Electric's Clean Transportation Department. Let me go ahead and share my slides. So, as Assembly Member mentioned, I'm here to supplement some of the great information that Anthony and Jason have already mentioned this morning, and knowing that I'm probably the last thing that's standing between you and your dinner plans, I'm going to make it short and sweet and happy to answer any questions after this presentation. So today I'm going to talk about some of the offerings from SDG&E to help you with your electric vehicle electrification journey. So starting with infrastructure, and when I say infrastructure, I am referring to the charging needs to get in place for your personal vehicle or for your fleet business vehicles. We have a suite of programs that are on the market today that you could take advantage of. And so the point of this slide is just to spread awareness that these financial incentives do exist. But not only financial, we provide a lot of advisory services, and I just want everyone to be aware of it. So if something is along your electrification plans, you could take advantage of it. So starting in the top left-hand corner is our Power You Drive for Fleets program. This is an infrastructure incentive program to assist with electrification of medium and heavy duty fleets. Now I'm talking about Class 2 to all the way to Class 8 vehicles. Class 2 being a larger pickup trucks, like some of the Ford F-150 Lightnings that are out there that a lot of businesses are using for their fleets, all the way up to bus-sized vehicles, and that includes school buses, transit buses. We work with all sizes of fleets, and this program provides not only financial incentives to offset the cost of the make-ready infrastructure and the charger itself that's needed, but also guidance with where to even get started in this journey, from what vehicles are in the market today, what are the charging rates that are available for your business, and some of the other financial incentives that are available for you to take advantage of. Moving down, we also have a program that has been installing and providing infrastructure for installation of chargers, probably where people charge the most. So that's at home while you're sleeping. And given that more than 50% of our residents in San Diego live in apartments or condos, this program is designed to help those residents get infrastructure in their complexes. It's not as simple as getting a charger installed in your garage if you live in a single family residence. So we're really there to provide support in breaking down some of the barriers, helping to coordinate with their HOAs and other types of support. And then the other place where most of our customers charge is at work. So if you starting with a full battery and you drive to work through your commute, you want to have that safety net, knowing that you are going to have no problems getting back home on your full battery. battery. So we work with a lot of local businesses to install charging infrastructure for their employees to use while they're in the office. We also have been installing infrastructure at local schools, parks, and beaches. And when I refer to schools, I'm talking to everything from K through 12, vocational, and universities, where we have already installed plenty of infrastructure for use by not only students, but also the faculty. And we've also been installing public chargers at local, state, and county parks, as well as beaches. Last but not least is our EV infrastructure rule. And really, this is a catch-all net where if one of your sites or your charging needs don't fall into the qualification criteria of the first 3 Power Your Drive programs that I have mentioned, this is a new tariff that is available, which is essentially a new service pathway for separately metered EV charging sites outside of single-family homes. So this program provides resources to assist with site design, infrastructure needs, as well as paving and trenching. Now, having implemented these programs over the last 10 years or so, we have gotten a lot of feedback from our customers. And what we have found is that besides the infrastructure itself, what they're looking for from the local utility is really advisory services, is a one-stop shop on all their needs that go into their electrification journey. So based on that feedback, we have just recently launched our Transportation Electrification Advisory Services Program, also referred to as TEAS for short, because that's quite a mouthful. But this is truly an advisory services program, currently specifically designed to assist medium duty and heavy duty fleet electrification, but we're hoping to open it up to support all of our customer needs in the future. So as mentioned, it's advisory services, and all it requires is it's completely complimentary. And we have a webpage on our website, accessed by sdgne.com/teas, where you submit an interest form, and one of our super knowledgeable technical advisors will reach out to set up a personal consultation. We advise on all kinds of services, whether you are in a position where you're just starting to consider this transition, hearing about some of the regulations that are coming down the pipeline and want to learn more about those, or just looking for a place to start, what types of vehicles are out there, what types of incentives, to maybe you're further in the journey and are now considering other emerging technologies like vehicle to grid, battery storage. We help our customers in every phase of the life cycle to be able to support you in your electrification journey. Now, switching gears a little bit and focusing on our residential customers, this is information that I just want everyone to be aware of that is currently accessible on our website. We have several self-service tools that will help kind of customize your information that Anthony and Jason recently presented. So we have an electric vehicle option finder. So if you're just getting started and you want to understand what models are available out there, which nowadays there's quite a few on the market, and there's one that fits almost every lifestyle, this is a good place to start just to narrow down your search. Once you've kind of selected the top vehicle that you're interested in, other things that you need to consider, right? What incentives are available? So there's information that Anthony provided, and this tool customizes your option based on the vehicle that you're looking to purchase, along with some personal information. So it'll spit out a generated report that'll tell you exactly which incentives you may qualify for. And then the last thing is charging, specifically home chargers. What chargers are available on the market today? And we also provide a list of certified electrician in our service territory that have been vetted by SDG&E, that are a great place to start with a personalized customization that you can ask to come out to your home and get a quote for installation of an EV charger in your own home. One thing that I wanted to supplement Anthony's presentation on, when it comes to incentives specifically, we're very excited to have launched a brand new incentive in earlier this year, and that is a pre-owned EV rebate program. Now, a couple of things to note: this incentive is specifically for SDG&E customers. It is not as limited as the federal used car rebate, or if you qualify for the federal incentive, the good news is that this incentive is stackable on top of it. So what we offer is incentives for pre-owned used vehicles. And the good thing is you don't have to pre-qualify for this incentive prior to the purchase. This is a retroactive incentive that you could take advantage as long as it's within 180 days of purchase of your used EV. So most eligible customers that are in our service territory will qualify for a $1,000 rebate. And some customers that we consider rebate plus based on their income qualifications and some other criteria may qualify for up to $4,000 rebate, which is a great deal. There's more information on our website, and like the other speakers noted, all of these slides will be made accessible to you to access at a later time. Last but not least, something that I wanted to mention is when it comes to public charging, we have links to a great plug share tool that's available on the market today. It's accessible on our website, and it provides you with information about the public chargers, whether it's level 2 or DC fast chargers that are around you, no matter where you are in the service territory. This tool lists the chargers that SDG&E has installed, which includes level 2 and DC fast chargers that have been installed at parks, beaches, several park and ride lots, as well as some local school campuses across the region. So with that, I am going to wrap up. Like I said, happy to answer any questions afterwards, and I am going to pass it back to Assemblymember Ward to make a special announcement.
Well, thank you, Natasha. And yeah, we've got a few closing announcements coming up, and I want to thank all of our presenters today. If you want to come back on and join me on screen, only a couple of questions here that we wanted to be able to cover before some final comments. I think a question for Bernadette. Based on today's average electricity rates, and you talked about the average homeowner, the average size system, maybe the average homeowners incentive programs. What do you see as the potential to be able to break even? So what's the over under as far as making an investment in rooftop solar as opposed to continuing to pay for energy rates that you would otherwise pay for today?
Yeah, so great question. I think this is a common way that consumers try to evaluate whether or not they should go solar or not, is sort of the quote unquote payback period. So how long does it take if you pay upfront for that cost of the system? So you spend $30,000, say, on that solar and storage, minus the $10,000 federal tax credit. How long does it take for that system to pay for itself in terms of your monthly bill savings? It is very specific to every consumer, so it's super hard to give an exact number. It's also very specific to each utility district. In San Diego, there's a little bit of a better payback because utility rates are a little bit higher on average than in other parts of the state. You can expect a payback if you add a battery and are going solar and storage today, around 8 or 9 years. This is an average number. That is a little bit longer than what it was a few years ago, which is why we've seen such a huge decline in the sales of solar systems, and a lot of jobs lost and businesses have shut down as a result of that very drastic change the state put upon the state. But it still can pay for itself. The PUC put out there a few years ago, unfortunately. But the point is, I think to this webinar, it is still something that will pay for itself in time. If you can be patient, it is a great investment. You need to add the battery to get the most out of those savings, however.
For a system that will probably last on average 20 years. So definitely, a net positive over time. And Jason, you talked a little bit, I think there was a slide about, first of all, the state policy we have to have all new car sales go electric by 2035. A lot of Californians have been suspicious if we can meet that goal, but we've seen rapid adoption. Do you remember what today's percentage of EV sales are in the state? I think it's encouraging that we maybe can get there.
I'm not going to have the most recent, but I know California crossed 25% earlier in 2024, and that is incredibly encouraging. 1 out of every 4 cars is electric or electrified in some way, and that represents a trend that's positive. So I think we're heading towards 35%. And zooming in on the that policy itself, there's a specific ramp that has to be followed, and percentage of sales by each model year. And I think 2026 is the first the beginning of that escalator, and it's something like 32%. So we're really on track to actually meet that and get and be on pacing against that regulation, and that's to the credit of automakers bringing models that people are interested in buying. As Anthony was talking about, there's really excellent options now when you go into a showroom, and with all of the credits available and the financial arrangements, that they become very achievable as well. So I think, you know, there's a lot of investment happening on battery production. There's a lot of commitments to new EV plants. There's a lot of new models that are coming. And that's going to make meeting those future sales goals more and more realistic.
That's encouraging. Natasha, did you want to add on to that as well?
I think Jason captured it. I mean, that's why we continue to see the evolution of all the offerings that are out there to support this market, and we continue to see positive incremental growth, and that's really encouraging. And I think the commitment from the OEMs and the more makes and models that are available on the market only makes this transition easier.
Fantastic. And a question for Anthony. So one of the big benefits of getting an electric vehicle has been the decal program so that people can use the HOV lanes. But we heard recently that that might be discontinued. Do you have any awareness? Are you involved in working to make sure that the program could be resurrected?
Sure. Thank you, Assembly Member, for that. So there's an interplay between state and federal law that it's not just up to the state, unfortunately, whether the decal program continues. I believe, so the state passed this year, I believe, legislation that at the state level would allow the decal program to extend into 2027. I think it's currently set to expire in September 25, so about a year from now. And as you've mentioned, it's a huge reason that, you know, incentivizes certain consumers. If you can use the HOV lanes, that's an incentive, and it helps move these vehicles. And dealers definitely have reported that to us. So you know, I think we're certainly supportive as an organization of, and the state is as well, supportive of potentially continuing the program through that legislation. But the federal government needs to buy in. And that's TBD to my knowledge, whether that will happen. And they're going to be balancing, I'm sure, a variety of factors, because ultimately they want to make sure these lanes, if we're selling a third of all new vehicles are electric and all of them qualify for HOV stickers, there's going to be a lot more congestion on the HOV lanes than there would have been when we were, you know, as Jason mentioned, 10 years ago when we were at 3% new vehicle sales as being qualifying. So there are a variety of factors to consider, but it's something that certainly we're supportive of. Any incentive that encourages folks to acquire these vehicles, because there's a lot of good that comes from that.
Thank you for that. And then Natasha, I think I'm actually going to turn this one back to you. You might have been waiting for me, but question, how can people test drive an EV? Is there something coming up that maybe they can go check out for themselves?
There is something coming up. So we are really excited to offer a EV Day in the Community event happening this Saturday in Grossmont. And it's an opportunity to come in and test drive a variety of electric vehicles. Sometimes there's not sufficient inventory available at dealerships, or it's just honestly a pain to go to different dealerships if you got your eye on a couple of different models. So we're planning to bring several, quite a few of the most popular models into one place where you'll have an opportunity to get in, test drive all of them in one day. We'll also have a lot of knowledgeable experts all in one spot to be able to cover a lot of the information that you heard about today, but be able to have that one-on-one conversation with our experts, whether it's about incentives or chargers. We're going to be there to answer all the questions to hopefully convince you to electrify your next ride.
Well, thank you for that, and I look forward to seeing you there. We covered a lot of ground tonight, and I want to thank all of our attendees that were here to take in so much information. Probably impossible to capture all of it, but the good news is that if you missed any portion of the webinar or would like a recap, or would like to share this information with a neighbor, a recording of all of this that was discussed will be uploaded to our website in the next day or two. And we will furthermore be able to send any of the slides, recap some of the websites referenced today. You just need to reach out to my district office to be able to receive that. And we'll be sure to be able to use our social media channels as well to promote that, because there's a lot to recap on. But I think the end all be all that we learned here today is that it is possible for any San Diegan to consider going solar, going electric. You've got to maybe do a little bit of homework. You've got to look for what incentives and what opportunities you qualify for. But the time is right here in the present for all of us to be able to make a shift. And I encourage everybody as well to come on out to Grossmont Community College this Saturday, September 14th, to join us at EV Day and really test drive some of these models for free, to drive a variety without the pressure of purchasing, and see for yourself if this is something that you're comfortable making the plunge, when you're ready to purchase that next vehicle. Furthermore, throughout the fall, I am home on recess. We ended our legislative year at the Capitol on August 31st. So I do hope to see many of you at a local community association, out at a community festival, or some other opportunity as I crisscross our district this fall. These conversations really help me get a sense of topics to work on when I return to the Capitol in the winter to begin the new legislative year as your representative. And on another topic, we are having an important update on October 2nd with officials from the Department of Insurance to understand what is going on with the state of insurance for consumers and solutions that we are working on to be helpful. So I invite you to please stay tuned to your email or social media announcements on that event. As always, if you need any assistance with any state agencies or have any questions about tonight's presentation, please do not hesitate to reach out to my district office. My team will drop our website and phone number in the chat for you to access. With that, again, to all of our presenters, Anthony, Bernadette, Jason, and Natasha, thank you for your time and all of your information. It was really helpful and informative, and I wish everybody a really wonderful week ahead. Hope to see you out at Grossmont on Saturday.
Thank you, Assemblymember.
Thank you.